All right. Well, big friendly hello. This is the first morning evening call of the Notary Governance taking place on January 31st. Let's take a look at the agenda that we have scheduled for this call. So right off the bat, we have it broken into 4 sections. Section 1 will be introducing the governance team, making sure that you're aware of who to reach out to in case of issues if you're new to the program, as well as sharing the link for all the notaries and storage providers that want to mark themselves down for SLA. Moving into the heart of the call, we have a lot taking place on the notary side of things. So we'll be walking through the onboarding process, and then we have speakers from Phil and Simon that will be walking us through some of the updates they've been making with the new leaderboard and the FDM and removal of data cap. After that, KZ is going to walk us through like a high level of what's going on with the Enterprise Phil Plus side, and then RG will be answering questions on trust and transparency. When we get to the discussion topics, Galen's going to walk us through a statement that they pushed out recently, kind of field any questions that you guys may have. And then we had some community requests to kind of discuss some open proposals that are in flight. So very full time, but we should have plenty of time for questions and discussions as we go forward. Just for transparency, I may try to like moderate. So if a topic does seem to last a little bit too long, I may ask that we kind of shift that into an async conversation. But for the most part, this will be a very ample time for any questions or comments that we want to dive into on this call. So with that, if you are joining this governance call for the first time or you're an old seasoned hat, this is the schedule for 2023. As you know, as you're on this line, we do this live as well as post to YouTube about the next day after the call. So after this, we'll have a very romantic governance call taking place on February 14th. So that should be on the calendars. If you have any questions or issues, please feel free to reach out to me and I can help get that set up for you. But please follow this Google Calendar if you're watching. Make sure you can be here with us as we go forward. We talked about Slack channels on the last call. And before I got into anything else, I just want to kind of reiterate this as a helpful place to be if you're looking to jump into the conversations and kind of shift it. As you may notice, like some Slack channels have very targeted discussions that might be more tactical in their nature, and some Slack channels are very, very broad. So a lot of the new notaries coming on board, I've been trying to point you to like, hey, asking these questions in like one of the private areas is a great way that we can all benefit from it. So I wanted to thank some of the people on the call for asking their questions, like for example, in the Filecoin Plus notaries. That way other people could benefit from the answers as we go forward. Really helpful, and we'll be driving it. Same thing with the Phil Plus. We'll talk about this on the call as we go on. But if we start a conversation either on this notary governance call or in Slack, it's really just a conversation. If you're looking to kind of move that conversation into the tactical, we'll talk a lot about like actually filing a proposal in GitHub to move it from just discussion based to like something that's now being measured by the community and looked at. So we'll talk more about that. But just as a refresh, these are the Slack channels where a majority of the comms are happening. If you haven't joined a working group, they will be on the call, Kevin Z and Rod RG, giving you updates on this. But again, just friendly sharing where their working group information is updated, so you can go grab that if you have any questions going forward. This agenda that we talk about on the call, it's coming from a GitHub issue that's made 2 weeks in advance. So if you ever want to add a topic to this call as we're going forward, you can always post it in chat. And if we have time, we'll get to it. But to ensure that your questions or any issues that you want to talk about gets an ample dedicated time on the agenda so we don't skip over it, the best place to go is into the governance repo. It's linked here in this slide deck that I shared. And there you could actually post a comment like, I'd like to talk about this issue, and then we'll go ahead and add it to the agenda. So thank you to those of you that have done that. We've got you added on the agenda here today. All right, this is the new updated SLA form that we've completed from the last cycle. Thank you to everybody who filled it out. I'm going to drop the link here in chat, and you can go ahead and enter this in. Again, we use this SLA for the leaderboard. We'll talk about that more when Phil gives you an overview of it to kind of measure like who's participating in the program and start to build out that reputational score as we go forward. So take the time to add this. If you are not a notary, like you're a storage provider, a member of the community, an applicant, I highly recommend that you just fill this out as well and just say, hey, I was here. I was making my voice heard. We look at these when it comes to elections to get a feel of like who's been in the program, who's been participating, and who's coming. So just a friendly reminder, I'll post that invitation at the start of this call and again at the end for you. All right, let's move right into it. Let's get started with the governance, and we are the governance team here. So kind of going around the circle, I'll start and then I'll end with Galen. My name's Kevin. I work on essentially how is the community building out. So making sure that these calls have an agenda, making sure that the notaries know where to go for like getting started, the election, and having a focal voice to kind of route through. There are two working groups that are working on the program. KZ is leading the Enterprise Fill Plus working group, and this is how we bring on large scale data. And then essentially RG is leading the trust and transparency, like how are we looking at this program as it grows and ensuring that it has like a system in place for communicating and tackling these tough issues. Phil has been dedicated to notary tooling. He'll be talking on the call today about one of his projects specifically for the leaderboard and how we're reputational scores on notaries. And then Simon is looking at tooling to improve all of our lives and have some updates around FBM as well as removing data cap. Deep is focused on like how is that data cap flow working. Deep has a wealth background in the program, as you guys all know, and a great source of questions, but he's kind of running. So if you do have a specific question, sometimes it's best to kind of route through the teams that I've just listed before we get to deep. And if we're not able to solve it, we can loop in. Galen is taking the lead as far as like, what is the governance approach for the whole program? How are we growing it, scaling it, and how are we communicating that out like the best we possibly can for you in 2023? So if you have any issues, questions, or pings, this is kind of how we could plug in to help you get the best out of the program. We're all on Slack. All right, so notary update. This is coming from me. So thank you for everybody that got back to me during the Lunar New Year next week. Also, very much hope you had a delightful time, got to enjoy the holidays. To keep you updated on what's going on with the onboarding program, we sent a list of disclosures and sanctions checks out a few weeks ago, and we received all the information back, but not 100%. So what we've done is we've gone through that list and I'm starting to reach out and ping the folks that we never received information for. So this could be you filled out your application, you were accepted as a new notary, and now when we're looking on that disclosures list, we cannot find a notary address, or there's two addresses, or it's not a physical address. So you'll start to see pings from me if you haven't done so already in the application, just to make sure that it's transparent and public, saying, hey, we haven't received this disclosure, please get back to me ASAP. And then we'll keep doing this. So we'll be doing those kind of in waves. A lot of you asked in Slack, like, hey, I haven't received like any updates on like my token. I haven't received it. We're doing this in small batches, and then we're circling back for the ones we missed. So that means that you'll start to receive that fill in the coming days once you've cleared that sanctions and background check. So it's all normal. We're still going forward. So the only action you need to take is if you get a ping in your GitHub application, and I'll send you a DM as well. But if you get nothing from me, that means nothing is due. It's only if I reach out to you asking, otherwise you're good to go. We have set up all the comms, so all of you should now be involved in the regional channels, the notary channel that's private, as well as having a DM with me for anything sensitive you want to talk about. So those are great for how you go forward, list it out. So coming up next for you is once we've given you access and we've given you that fill, we're going to be sending you a steps in the private notary channel, essentially asking you to verify your ledger, your physical ledger on the chain. And again, as a reminder, it has to be the physical ledger. And if you have any kind of like digital ones, this will not work. So we'll be resharing those steps for you to log in. And this will essentially add you to the multi-sig. This is why those steps on our end to make sure that like we've got everybody on the program goes a long way so we don't miss you. So next action, you'll be reaching out. If you hear nothing from me, then you're good to go until we share those steps in the private channel. I'm going to pause here and see if anybody has any questions or anything that might have come up as far as onboarding and getting started for your new notaries. I see a tag from Faye in the chat. Thank you for the update on this. I'll just fix the formatting. That's just the URL that says the 17th, but on the back end, it should be good. Thank you for flagging. It will be all set. And then Jackie from Union Labs, I see I can't find our organization. So are you saying like in this drop down here, you have nothing for Union Labs? Okay, I'll take a look. In the meantime, I think I give you the option for like other. If you just list other right here, notary not on the list, I'll pull that on the back end and make sure that you're included and see what happened with that. Thank you for flagging. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Phil for an update on the Notary Leaderboard. Phil?
All right, yeah. Hey guys, so with the notary community growing with the fourth election, there have been growing concerns of notary accountability as seen in the last month. There's a lot of things happening. And so here I have two things that we've been working on to kind of take care of notary accountability in a more systematic manner for the long term. First, what we have been working on is called this thing called the Notary Leaderboard. What this website achieves is that it first, like currently just it displays statistics about each notary and increases transparency and accountability. So now you can see information about each notary and the allocations they're making, how much data cap they're issuing, like how fast they're issuing that, right? In the future, we want to use this we want to aggregate these statistics. So then you can start building a reputation. Like you can aggregate it to eventually build a reputation score or to flag notaries that have suspicious behavior. So this is a continual iteration process though, and we just released the first version. And if you have any comments or feedback or see any statistics that is wrong, you can just comment it here at 8:20. Or if you have any ideas to add to the Notary Leaderboard, feel free to like contact me or comment on this discussion post number 820. So this is good. Okay, can you bring me to the next slide? All right, so the other initiative we're starting to bring up is notary collateral staking with FVM. So this idea of notary staking has been floated since almost the beginning of Phil Plus itself. But now with the almost launch of FVM in mainnet, this is becoming much more feasible to implement. So the idea is basically notaries should stake a collateral to vouch for a certain client or LDN application. And if there's suspicious behavior or they're flagged, the collateral will be slashed. Currently, what we are doing, Fabri from the Keiko team is building an experiment version of this with FVM actors. Of course, we're not going to force anyone to stake collateral currently. This is going to be working in parallel with the current Phil Plus initiative. So you can, it's an opt-in. You can participate and you can choose not to participate. Currently, it will still be on testnet. I'm opening this discussion post, so then if anyone has comments or ideas, they can put it here. There are many questions about this, such as, should we reward the notaries when they stake? If we do reward the notaries, how much and where should the reward come from? How do we decide when to slash collateral for the notaries? Those are all very open questions that we have right now. And yeah, going forward, this could be an option to make the notary community more scalable. If you have any comments, contact me, message me on Filecoin Foundation Slack, or comment on this discussion post 817. Yeah, with that, I'll bring the spotlight to Simon.
All right, thanks, Phil. Hi, everyone. So this is for issue 818, which outlines the details of data cap removal. With Phil Plus growing, I think we've all seen that there's been a lot of cases of inactivity from verified clients or abuse of the system and the incentive. So this will be coming soon, but please check the proposal out. And I'd like to note that we're still modifying this and would love your input and feedback. Yeah, I think we're good for the next one, Kere. And then this is for auto closing applications. So with a similar topic regarding to the Phil Plus growth, issue 821 explains how applications that do not receive any data cap or do not have any engagement after 14 days will be auto closed. Keep in mind that the client is still allowed to apply again, but with so many applications, it makes it difficult to see and to cover each one. So again, if you have any input or feedback, that would be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Nice. I'm going to turn the floor open if anybody has any questions, since we have lots of time. This would be questions about the auto close process that Simon just went over. This would be questions about the data cap removal request. This would be questions on the staking, or this would be questions on the leaderboard. So I'll open that up. Galen, I see that you have a hand. I'll recognize you.
Yeah, I was just gonna see if Phil and Simon could drop links to those discussions. I think I grabbed the one for 820, excuse me, the leaderboard. But if we could get those other links, that'd be great, please.
All right, we'll see no hands. We could easily come back to this if you guys have a chance to play around. We'll be sharing these in the Slack channel, so you have the links, as well as Simon, Galen, thank you for posting those in chat if you want to start clicking. The big takeaway is we're working on those toolings. Looking forward to getting all those. And big thank you, Phil and Simon, for those coming. Great. Let's kind of shift gears into the governance side of things. So obviously a lot of discussions in our program in Slack over the last couple of weeks. We're trying to take the format of like what's taking place in Slack, shifting a lot of those like official requests into proposals and really giving you answers as we go forward. So Galen, I know you're on the line. I'm going to turn the floor over to you to kind of talk about some of the recent changes, the updates that you've published, and anything you wanted to comment on for Main Team.
Yes, awesome. Thank you. I'm going to grab the link to that one. Posted here, 819. Just as we've said from the last governance call, there have been some like really strong conversations happening across different Slack channels, across GitHub, and probably also happening in various DMs and things that we're not necessarily privy to. And I think that this will always be a balancing act of, encouraging, a lot of self-moderation, encouraging the community to push in a lot of different directions, while also still trying to hold one another accountable. Filecoin Plus has always been a pretty civil and professional space. I think Filecoin in general, compared to some of the other crypto projects that I have seen, tries to remain a pretty mature professional working environment. And I would like it to stay that way very much. So I think that we've seen a number of kind of comments or Slack messages that are pretty clearly not respectful, civil, polite, and professional. And we're going to be, as an entire community, but also as the governance team, we're going to be having to crack down on those code of conduct violations. It's not okay to participate in certain types of, name calling or threatening. And I get it. Sometimes things are lost in translation. So let's just try to do our best to assume best intent, but then also check yourself before you send that message. Reread it and say, could this be misunderstood? Is this maybe a little hot under the collar, and I should wait and come back when I've calmed down a little bit and reread this? If you feel that someone is violating a code of conduct, reach out to the governance team directly. If you feel that you have and you need to apologize, reach out directly. This is a restorative justice space where I want to encourage you, like we all get intense, where we care about this. Like we have a lot of time, money, our own professional stake vested in the success of this program. And so it makes sense that if somebody is accusing you of something that you think you didn't do, you would defend yourself. But that defense needs to remain just as professional as you would talking to one of your own coworkers or one of your own competitors in a business setting. So that's like high level. Let's please keep it civil. As far as like getting into some of the specifics, there's a number of proposals out there that are looking at, what are we going to do in light of some of the things that we have now seen from some of the new tooling. And these are not necessarily new conversations. This is something I said like 2 weeks ago in that governance call. We have, always been balancing between growth and accountability, right? Like if we only prioritize going as fast as possible as a community, then we will build tools, we'll build processes, we'll do everything we can to try and decrease the barrier to going from a new client to having a deal sealed on chain, right? That's growth. All of us care about growth, but we have to balance that with an amount of accountability, because if we make it too easy, then the people that are trying to necessarily, not necessarily be the best actors in this space, it will be easier for them to engage in that pathway than to do it, quote unquote, the right way. So we've launched some tools. It uncovered some, quantitative analysis. So people looked at that quantitative analysis and said, I think there's some bad acting happening here. That's great. That is exactly what we want in a self-moderated community. That is like one of the reasons why we release these tools the way that we do. It's also why we encourage everyone in this community to release their own tools as well. There was not necessarily anything stopping another team from building something like a CID checker bot or some other on-chain analysis tooling, right? And this is where we want to keep pushing back and forth on the notaries, on the storage providers, on the interested community members to build these tools to see, what is going on, where are some gaps in our own tooling and transparency and accountability, make these pitches and proposals. So with that said, you can go read the issue. We're talking about like some of the things that we're doing specifically in light of the recent conversations, but also just high level. The governance team is still working on trying to get a summit that has been put on pause. If that doesn't happen, we're just going to be doing it kind of remotely. We'll do an internal remote summit, but one of the output products from that is going to be sort of a more public-facing roadmap that shows what the governance team is planning to prioritize over the next kind of basically the rest of this like fiscal year. And our hope there is that the community can see how we are sort of threading the needle between growth and accountability. And then the community can also help give feedback on our public roadmap to say, we're prioritizing too much maybe in one direction and we need to go in another. So what I want to keep having be the case is that people are self-moderating, they are looking into these different issues, they are helping us develop tools, they are raising discussion posts or Slack threads, and they're having those conversations in the open, and they're keeping them professional and civil and allowing the rest of the community, including the governance team, to jump in and help look at what is happening. One of the things that we have long talked about that I think we're going to need to codify is this idea of who in the Filecoin Plus community gets a say. And one of the things that we have always discussed is that anyone can make a Slack account, anyone can make a GitHub account, anyone can join this governance call and ask a question. They can ask it politely, they can ask it with evidence, they can shine a light on something that they see. But that doesn't mean that every one of these questions that comes out there or every comment on a GitHub issue necessarily carries the same weight. The notaries, part of being a notary is that you are raising your hand and you are saying, I will give an amount of information about who I am. I will agree to be transparent. I will tell you my stake on the network. I will tell you what, how I'm related to these different storage providers or clients or entities. I will connect my email and my Slack and my GitHub so that I am this person. I have gained social trust in this community by doing the notary application process. And in so doing, your voice carries more weight than the GitHub account that was created yesterday that has no issues associated with it. So I want you to keep that in mind. When we start to see these like spicy conversations, there are going to be times when the governance team and the notaries will not recognize or address comments that are not necessarily useful and productive from new, unknown Slack and GitHub handles. This is a notary governance call. This is a notary governance community. We welcome input from the community generally, but we can't address every comment and concern from everyone that makes an account. So bear that in mind. Does that mean that we're going to some like on-chain voting mechanism thing? No, do not like make that leap to that conclusion. Some people have mentioned that, and I don't think that that's necessarily like the direction we're going right away. But it does mean that when we start to reach proposals that are controversial, right? A proposal that says, should we require staking for the next round of notaries, and it's going to be this amount. There are going to be some notaries that disagree with that. There are going to be some community members that disagree with that. We may want to listen to those community members, but if it needs to come to a push-pull compromise situation, it's going to be the governance team and the notaries that have a say in making that final decision. So keep that in mind with all of these proposals and conversations. I think there have been some things in the chat, but I think that they are mostly around some of the proposals mentioned earlier. Kay-Ray, is there anything that I need to address from the chat right here?
I think a lot of it has to do with staking. Maybe this is the first time that that's come up. Maybe just a couple of thoughts on that.
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts on that. There had long been questions around, like, how do we take Filecoin Plus and apply some additional financial mechanisms to it to help ensure greater accountability? And so one of the things that we have done is, in the application, we asked for long-term network alignment, which means how long have you been a part of the Filecoin community and how much are you invested in Filecoin? Because if you have a long-term investment in Filecoin, you are more likely to make decisions that safeguard the entire community, right? If you're a brand new person and you get a ton of power on the network by being a notary, why would you, how are you kind of prevented or incentivized from making like wrong, bad decisions that hurt the network? So this is just one of the mechanisms that we use in the application process. It's not the most important, it's just one of them. And so what we're talking about here is, what might it look like? What are some other things we could test or try that would help us understand that a notary has a vested interest, has a stake in the decision making that they are doing? And so if a notary, we are investigating a lot of ways to do this. And this is why it is a proposal, and we want to have this conversation. We want this conversation to be generative and idea and solution driven. Does this necessarily mean that we are going to require some flat rate staking when you apply? No, we're not there yet. This is a proposal to see where we want to go. And some of the things that we are talking about is, what if a notary puts a stake more like a collateral and less like staking in the sense that I will put it into a pool and gain interest on it? It's, okay, if I am a notary and I am going to sign a data cap allocation for, X number of TIBs of data cap, I need to stake X amount of Filecoin until that deal has been sealed on chain, and then I get that back. That is like one of the ideas that we have. But yes, Phil, I think, wants to speak more on this better than my rambling. Take it away, Phil.
Yeah, hey guys. So there's been a lot of comments in the chat about like little like implementation details of like the questions, right, about around notary staking. Should they be rewarded? Should they not? How much should they be rewarded? And like, should staking come first and then rewards come later in the next implementation? So this is all great discussion, and I think that we should put this in like the discussion post, because then your thoughts will be actually recorded and like people can respond to those rather than being here, because the comments here would not be saved. So I think it's a great idea to just push it there, because I think that all of this are great thoughts, and it's important to keep these. Yeah.
Totally. Yes, I dropped the link in there again. Discussion 817. Keep the conversation going. Staking and other financial incentive models. And one of the reasons that we're really thinking about this now is sort of this new smart contract world with FVM and FEVM. What can that open up for us? You know, we have the ability, we will have the ability soon to write actors that exist. How can we use those in a Filecoin Plus world to say, you know, if this, then that? And how does that give a notary themselves, you know, greater protections? It shouldn't necessarily be that every smart contract that, you know, applies to notaries is written and authored by the governance team. If you are a notary and you may want to say, I'm going to write my own smart contracts to give myself some CYA, so that if somebody comes back and says, well, how did you make this decision? Or, you know, how do you know that you had working with the correct people or making the correct allocations? It'd be interesting to see notaries writing their own smart contracts for how they may want to automate something, or how they may want to flag themselves if there's a potential second request or a potential thing that they consider as bad behavior down the line with the data cap that they've been given. I would love to see notaries like come up with their own mechanisms to say, look, I gave an allocation to somebody and they used it in a way that I didn't agree with when I gave it to them. And it's my responsibility just as much as it is every other notary's to stay on top of that. And I could go in and flag that a client is doing something I didn't approve. And maybe there's a smart contract way of looking at that. Anyway, check out the governance statement 819. Stay tuned for some feedback from a public roadmap and a potential summit that we're going to have the next few weeks. And as we have already mentioned, go check out those governance or those proposals. Sounds like specifically 817 is the really interesting one. So I look forward to reading through that in the next few days.
Wait, one more thing, guys. So Fabri, who is building the thing for 817, he posted a comment on post 817 talking about what exactly he's building. It has limited implementation. It's still like very limited with its capabilities, but he's going to build that out. And if you have any feedback on what he's going to build out, you can reply to his comment there, because like he's basically the guy building this out. So yeah, that's reply to that. Cool.
So, hey, Galen, Phil, Simon, for questions about staking, who is the main POC on the governance side? So as we see some of these comments in chat talking about this, where should these be directed? To whom and in what avenue?
You can push the comments to me, or like you can like message me if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, for right now, Phil is the author of this discussion post. And so pushing any questions and comments into discussion 817 and into the Slack channels specifically would be a great place to start.
Got it. Yeah, Charles, Cal, thanks for the comments in the line. Like, as far as like, how does this work? Like, how does it work for you existing? I think these are like the community input that we're really keen to get as we go forward. So it looks like you've already gotten the doc. Please leave some comments in there as far as like how this process can work on an intelligent level, and we'll build the tooling around that. So thanks for flagging that. We'll make sure that this link gets shared, but check out that 817, and Charles, keep those comments in there. I appreciate that. Sweet. Next slide, we're going to turn it over to working groups. So KZ, if you're on the line, I think you've got first then.
I'm here. Thanks, Kevin. Hey, everyone. KZ here. Quick update on the eFil Plus working group pilot. So we started this 3 months ago, focused on private data sets, enabling private data sets to get approved for data cap. That's really what's been the focus thus far. A couple quick updates. We're continuing to support open applications. So far, there's been 6 applications approved, meaning they've received at least the first allocation of data cap. And there are 5 applications open, working through approvals, I will say the feedback that I could give is, finding SPs to store copies has been the major hurdle for some of these applications to move forward. So that's something we're working through as a working group to help them out and support. This is an active pilot, so we're actively looking for any private data clients or SPs that are interested in participating still. Feel free to reach out to me. There's also a website with more information there. And just a reminder that the focus of part of this application is clients are asked to submit a registration form, signaling who they are, someone that I can connect with if needed, and also complete a business check as part of this process. And we're using those type of tests to help build a better product longer term. The second quick update, we have an eFil Notary multi-sig. We had around 20 that were working last year to help support these applications. I opened it up and we were adding 13 new notaries to the multi-sig. And we're also enabling an updated SLA that asks notaries, one, they'll be randomly assigned to potentially applications they don't know about. So we're assigning notaries randomly. We're asking them to review and comment on all applications that are assigned within a set time frame. So we're just testing some different processes here to see how that group is doing as a cross-functional connection to what the notary tooling and Phil is doing, what Simon is doing with applications, what RG and the TNT working group are doing. And I'm working collectively with all those other teams to help build a better product overall. Any questions, feel free to reach out in Slack. Thanks for your time.
Great. We'll open it for questions now if anybody has anything for Casey. All right, then moving on. We had some threads running Slack, so I'd like to build off that with like, what are we looking at when it comes to large data sets, and what are we looking at when it comes to due diligence? So in each of the notary applications that come through, one of the lines that sometimes gets overlooked is like, hey, as a notary, what are you specifically going to be doing to verify these applications and kind of run this KYC check? So I kind of wanted to share this scope. This got shared in Slack a few times, and I think it's just a helpful slide for us to all to have as like a basis. But what's nice about this is as we're looking at this documentation, as we're scaling up the program, I think a big lesson learned that I'm seeing is making sure that the documentation really gives examples and edge cases. So you're not left assuming, is this within rights or is this kind of outside the bounds? But in order for that data set to be eligible, pulling from GitHub, we should be looking at like, is it aligned and open and transparent? Is it set up with like the missions of the program? Is it readily retrievable? And then kind of looking at like what that readily retrievable really means as we go forward. And then how is that open dispute for the ecosystem being handled? So RG's team has been working quite in depth on this one. And I think there was 3 new issues in the last week alone. On this call, we're going to talk about some of the community raised issues that kind of have to deal with this. But RG, if you're on the call, I'd like to turn it over to you if you have any kind of content you wanted to share, either on 811 or the scope, or really just what's going on with trust and transparency.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a slide I added, might have not synced right before this. Could we just check before?
I think it might be marked as hidden.
Oh, okay, okay. Anyways, I can speak to it. So I think while Carrie gets it up, I think one of the main things I want to talk about is the status on 811. So with 811, I just closed it earlier today because as the author of the issue, I think that the discussion wasn't productive anymore. And I think should be the case going forward. Again, so it's a recommendation that the author of the proposal on the Notary Governance repo should be able to close out the issues. I think so that's the update on 11 in terms of what the mechanisms would be for these notaries to earn reputation. I hope to discuss that in the next week's TNT working group call. In terms of issue 815 and 816, they're still fairly new. So my proposal is to keep them open for one more week and then let the discussion evolve and see what conclusion we reach. I think moving forward, I would like to propose that we have a 2-week kind of a timeline for most of these issues. I think that partly to make sure that we have some sort of deadline for community members to participate, and then we can keep the discussion a bit more productive when there's a deadline, as well as we can have the action items come out of it, so then we can proceed with it. So again, a proposal. If I think I'll create a proposal on the Notary Governance repo to propose that we should have each proposal for 2 weeks, and yeah, we can discuss that further. I briefly mentioned earlier last week that I'll be sharing a form on GitHub names and Slack IDs. So that form will be shared today. And that is in line with some of the work that Phil is doing. So with the whole, I think there have been some questions that I've gotten in DMs as well as in just like public groups about what the TNT DAO would look like. And so a big part of the DAO would be staking, and we can have differing opinions about it, but that's the approach that I, as the TNT working group lead, would like to take, is to have people stake to become part of the TNT DAO, and then you can still be part of the working group, the broader working group, but I think moving forward, that's the approach we want to take. So I was waiting for Phil to announce the staking mechanism before I collect these IDs. And last but not least, I'll be out of office from Feb 7 to Feb 14, so I would not be very responsive, but I think you can reach out to other members in the governance team who will be able to respond to certain issues. And just based on that, I will be holding the TNT working group call on February 6th at the same times. I will update the invite and send the invite to anyone interested, as well as share it in the TNT working group channel. So those are the updates on my front.
Thanks, RG. So the first question we have comes from Wyman. Wyman, the floor is yours.
Well, yeah, the second line proposal to remove notaries did not go through, or?
Yeah, it did not go through. Yeah, I think,
did not go through.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more what the follow-up action will be then for this item?
Sure. Yeah. So I think I posted it on last week as a suggestion, and there were a few comments that were in support. There were a few comments that weren't in support. But I think after following the thread, which is, I think at this point, 150 comments, seems that a lot of people agree that we should focus more on ways in which these notaries can earn back reputation and potentially think about repercussions. In terms of, I don't know if the repercussions would be like banning them from signing or pausing them signing, but the repercussions would be potentially getting them to do more due diligence and showing them how they are abiding by their due diligence plan. So that was actually the proposal that I had is like, let's say, so I wanted to formalize this. So I think the proposal right now is to choose 10 random applications that they have. Well, they could be random or they could be the last 10 signed applications. And then for them to show, post a video or make a post showing that, how did they align their signing process with the due diligence plan. I actually got some DMs from certain notaries who have actually created a video. So I believe that ipfs Metaverse, they have recorded a video explanation and this explaining themselves. I think other notaries might have posted or posted them as comments of how the certain applications are aligned with the due diligence plan that they've mentioned. Now we as a community can disagree that we don't think that this is a good enough explanation, and that's why we're going to move forward with you having the repercussions. The repercussion that I proposed again in issue 811 was getting each of these notaries who we don't think abided by their due diligence plan to support due diligence on 50 applications each, but they're on which they're not signers. And we will see, if first of all, if they're supporting other notaries in due diligence, the quality of that due diligence, and then moving forward, I think we will make a decision if they deserve to stay as a notary. So that's the plan right now. Again, this was a recommendation that I proposed. I haven't received other recommendations of like what the potential repercussions should be if these notaries are not able to prove that they were signing in alignment with their due diligence plan. So I would like to move the conversation away from removal to kind of think about potential repercussions and potential ways in which they can earn back reputation, which was kind of what I was just talked about.
Okay, but that's clear.
Yeah,
that's clear, and that's fine. That's clear for me.
okay.
Thanks.
I had a quick question on something. RG,
Dylan, go ahead.
I think you said leaving proposal issues open for 2 weeks
Yes.
and then closing.
Yeah, so I think this 811 was open for a bit more, I think partly because of the Chinese New Year. But moving forward, I think this 2 weeks is actually coming from some of the reading that I've been doing on optimistic governance broadly. And so if people think that, we need to change the timeline, please propose something. But I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there is a set kind of recommended deadline from the governance team today for any issue that is opened on the governance repo. And so I think I would like to propose that when we open a new issue, it should have a set deadline. So yeah, right now I'm thinking 2 weeks, but could be different based on community consensus.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we have tried to say in the past is that it should be discussed in like 2 governance calls. And so that gives us like a bit of a moving target window based on when it is and when the governance calls happen, and may account for the different holidays, but still functionally can hit the same timeline. So I wonder if rather than phrasing it as specifically 2 calendar weeks, we say needs to be the deadline needs to be discussed in 2 governance calls, and then it's similar but pegged to a different variable.
That makes sense. I think the other, thing that I personally would like to do is move away, specific topic conversations to working groups. So I think I don't know if other leads on the governance team, I've had conversations, for example, potentially having a notary working group, having a client working group, and things like that. And so I think I see moving those conversations there, but I agree that it makes sense to have a conversation on a call. So yeah, I'll include that in my proposal.
Cool. And then I wanted to touch on something that came up between you and Wynand, which is around, I just want to highlight this and remind people, notaries submitted an application saying how they would perform diligence and what their process was going to be. And that applies to all of their allocation decision making. That is not just how will you behave on certain applications or on direct allocation requests. So in your notary application, when you say, I'll do X, Y, and Z, here's my bookkeeping plan, here's this, here's my proposed process. And if you copy and pasted that from another notary and didn't read it, well, do your own homework. That allocation plan, that process, that bookkeeping plan, that due diligence plan applies to large data sets as well. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at large data sets. And that's where this restorative justice line is coming from. If we think that notaries were doing, not doing their due diligence plan, let's give them the opportunity to prove to us that they were, or that they can, and hopefully that turns around the behavior and also, gets some ingrained behavior as they go through practicing doing the diligence. Do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, it was basically for you. because the other issues I opened were not so much about wrongdoing, but more about a conflict of interest, and it was not totally clear anymore how this was settled in the round 3, because some notaries have the same stake, so they own the same miner, so they basically have the same organization. And was it said that they shouldn't sign jointly on an application? Can you provide us with some documentation in the next week or something about this?
Yeah. So we want to post like some more clarity on like conflict of interest, but functionally, a actor should not play all 3 roles without like clear documented justification that other notaries like can sign off on. So for example, if a person comes and says, I did the BD and I am representing the client and I am a storage provider, they're playing 2 roles and they're doing it transparently. And if they go get other notaries to sign it, that's great. Right. We have many examples where that is happening. But if somebody comes and says, I am representing the client, I am the storage provider, and they are also the notary, then that would be a consolidation of interest and would be not what we want. Where we have tried to bake in safeguards for that is having the LDN require multi-sigs where it's multiple notaries are required. So what we want is for it to be different notaries from different regions and not the same notary signing repeat allocations. And that's where the whole like you can, if you're a notary, you and someone else can sign the first allocation, 2 other notaries should sign the second allocation. And so theoretically, those are helping prevent it. This is again where like if we can have better things with smart contracts, we could write an easy smart contract that says if you signed the previous allocation, you just functionally can't sign the subsequent one. But I think your point is what happens when we have multiple notaries that roll up to the same entity. Is that?
Yeah, and then they do the approval and the proposal and the approval. So when you have a data cap allocation request open, they do the proposal plus approval as basically one organization. So then you miss a security boundary that normally you do this with 2 separate entities. Right. That was more.
And and that's where like we have the disclosure form and we want people to explain their disclosures and we want to have more distribution of behavior than what you're talking about. And so as of right now, there are, we know that there are some notaries that have relationships with one another because they were spun out, and it becomes really hard to say, well, where's the boundary between if they like roll up to the same boss or have the same money. And like an example of this is like looking at something like the Filecoin Foundation and a project that we gave a grant to, right? If the Filecoin Foundation gave money to this organization and spun it out as its own thing, or if PL spun out a project like Estuary, those are now, from us sitting here with a lot of eyes on it, we can see that those are pretty much separate things, but someone else who doesn't have as much transparency or background historical knowledge on those people might be like, hey, wait, is this just PL or FF, puppeting this organization? And when you're outside of it, it becomes really murky to tell, like, no, we spun them out. They're their own team. They have their own HR department. Like, how much evidence, do we need to give to prove that? And it becomes really hard to do. And that's the same from where we're sitting trying to tease out, okay, well, this notary clearly has a relationship with this other notary. And we ask them about it. And they're like, yes, we have a relationship, but we don't own them. And we're not both owned by the same company. We just work together. And it makes it really difficult because, like I said, like we're at this place in crypto entirely where one company has so many strong ties with all these other companies. And I mean, like, look at the PL network, is a very broad web where we want to support all of those people with shared interests rising in power and moving up. So where do we draw the line between, this notary organization who is behaving over here, they are predominantly a software company. This notary organization is predominantly a storage provider. However, they got funding from the same place at some point in time. That's a pretty reasonable thing. If you're an investor in crypto, you're an investor in an industry, you want to try and diversify your investment to make sure that you're hitting all the potential market spaces. And that if one of these things is going to do well, it's sort of balanced by the other doing well too. So it's hard to say like, okay, well, for every notary, for every organization, we're going to need, give me your board budget so that we can see exactly where like that amount of like financial forensic investigation is just like not reasonable for us checking who the notaries are.
But
so I think
that was sorry, but that wasn't what I meant, because they disclose they own the same SPs, so they disclose themselves, but they're still signing jointly approval and proposal. So that my question was more like, didn't we have rules in place that they only one is allowed to sign? I can set examples, but I think you know what I'm talking about.
Got it. Galen, before you respond to that, I think I auto-muted both of you. Sorry, just in the interest of time, we're at the 9 mark. If you want to do like a quick, just reply to that, and then we'll break for this call and address it on the second. Thank you for these questions, Wyatt. And then the chat also. Thank you for that, Charles and Phil. Galen, do you want the last comment on that before we break?
I can add something real quick before we wrap. I mean, Wyatt, I think your point is a fair and interesting one. The main thing that we're basically looking at is that it's kind of impossible to know and perfectly accurately track who is signing for themselves versus not, right? Because people will just not let you know or find. It's very easy to create new IDs and hide behind them on the network. And so what we really want to get to is priority number 1 is disclosure and transparency in the system. Priority number 2, based on the assumption that we can get to disclosure and transparency, is very, very clear guidelines that then we can build systems around that are still sustainable. And so the initial version of this was, when you become a notary, you should disclose the IDs that you work with. You should disclose the financial interests that you have as a notary in the network. And then when you're signing data cap, just as a direct allocation, you shouldn't sign anything that ends up with yourself. If you're signing as part of the LDN process, you are signing alongside other notaries that could help theoretically with due diligence or are part of the discussion in giving or not giving data cap. So the precedent that existed in the past was basically, when we created the LDN program, was like 20, 25 notaries, not so many of them even so active, as you know, and many were required upfront to sort of commit to giving data cap to an application. And that's why it was kind of like, better to go down this path of disclosure transparency. It's likely that they are going to be overlapping interests. Where we are in the program today, the LDN process is moving with much higher throughput. There's like nearly 10 times the amount of active notaries, especially after this current round of elections that's been closed out. And I think your point is that basically maybe we need to update the precedents and say, hey, it is no longer the case that we actually need the same role, the same entity, the same people that are plugged in, well aware of what's happening. There's a lot better due diligence out there. There's a lot better disclosure tracking out there. We have many more notaries that are interested in looking through applications and reacting to them. And so maybe we need to change that precedence and change the policy. I think that's completely valid, and we should consider that. And so what I would like to see actually probably to this is a proposal that basically says, move forward with finalizing that a notary cannot, or X number of notaries cannot sign a data cap application if they are in some way resulting or benefiting from like the storage provider side of the house when serving requests from that particular client. I think the main pushback will just be, how do we improve the disclosures? How do we improve the tracking? With the first part being more challenging.
Correct.
Nice. Deep, thank you for that final thought. Any further conversations on this? I think going over to the issues is a great place to carry that forward. So thank you for flagging that, Galen. Thank you all for staying 3 minutes past. The next call will take place later this evening at 1800 Pacific time, 02 UTC. Calendar is located, and this recording will be live the next couple of days. Thank you again for your time. Appreciate it. Cheers. All right. Well, big friendly hello. Welcome to the second Notary Governance call of the 31st of January, 1st of February, depending on your time zone. Let's take a look at what we have tentative on this agenda. So kicking off a little bit of housekeeping, just checking in on who the governance team is, how you can reach out for help, and what are the big issues on the time horizon. And then taking time for any of you that are on the call live to kind of sign our participation for Leaderboard. Number two, we'll check in on what the time frame looks like for onboarding, keep you updated on what that process looks like on the back end, as well as next steps. We also have some updates from Phil and Simon as far as Leaderboard, as far as staking, as far as removing data cap. So lots of project updates coming in this sync for you. Then Galen's going to take the reins and kind of walk us through some updates on the governance. A lot of this stems from conversations that have been unfolding with the community, kind of checking in on our standards, our guidelines, and answering any questions you have. After that, we have both RG and KZ that are going to be on the line with us, giving an update on what those working groups are looking at, any project updates. I know there was a lot going on with trust and transparency. So RG will really dive into that. And at the end, if it's like the morning, we should have around 10 or 15 minutes left on the call. So if you're on this call and you have a new issue and you like to kind of flag it, you should get that chance at the end. As always, when we go through this, we use a governance schedule right here that's posted. This is an every other week call. If you want to follow this meeting and you're watching this recording, we embed the link in the YouTube description down below. You can add this to your calendar and follow the dates that we have listed here going forward. If you're looking to communicate with us, as always, just stressing for new notaries and new community members, these are the channels where a lot of the comms happen for the Notary and Phil Plus programs. As you can see, Phil Plus is the main channel. It has over 2,100 members. If you're looking for that smaller, tight-knit channel, we invite all of the notaries to this Phil Plus Notaries channel. It's private, it's for notaries only, and a lot of the communication, tactics, and further discussions. If you filed an application and you're waiting to hear back and you're joining this call to see how the program works, you can always post in Phil Plus applications. This is the easiest way to tag the governance team as well as the notaries. It doesn't guarantee that your application will get a review that day, but if you've pinged in GitHub and you're looking for a way to kind of elevate that, that's where that application review channel will come in helpful. We also have the two working group channels. These are open to all SL2 and above notaries, as well as community members that want to follow along. Both of these channels are public. You could join at any time. Phil Plus Enterprise is led by Kevin Z. It focuses on large-scale data and bringing that enterprise data in. And the Trust and Transparency group is exactly how it sounds, looking at the program overall and identifying ways that we can strengthen as we go forward. So two very active projects right now within Phil Plus. If you want to get any items on the agenda, feel free to comment. Thank you to those who have. All you have to do is say, I'd like this on the topic. We'll make sure that we allocate time and have either one of the governance teams speak to your issue or specifically say if you have any questions yourself. Also, if we do have time, there's a community discussion that we post. So with that, here's the last bit of housekeeping. In chat, I'm going to post the link to the sign-up board that we have for SLA. This all links back to this Airtable board where you fill out your name, your session time, your organization that you represent. And as always, we compile this during notary elections to kind of say like, hey, have you been in the program before? Have you been coming? And then also Phil's going to talk a little bit about the leaderboard that's slowly rolling out. And that's going to pull specifically from a lot of this data to kind of calculate that score for participation in program. So completely optional, but highly recommended if you are a notary on this call or wishing to be one, and we'll go forward from there. So with that, let's kick off. Here is the governance team. I'm sure you've seen a lot of us before if you've been within the program for a while. My name's Kevin. I specialize in how are we developing the community, making sure that our calls are working, that our comms have somebody that can flow to, and then getting back to you if you get blocked. I usually just play a little bit of the traffic cop, and then a lot of that happens at the working group level. So Kevin Z that you see on the phone, line, picture, he leads the enterprise Phil Plus, and RG leads Trust and Transparency. So you could find them in their Slack channels. Down below, we also have Simon and Phil. Simon is working on notary tooling incentives. He's going to talk today about some of the programs that they're working on, as well as Phil, who's looking at notary onboarding and the client, excuse me, I'm mixing that up. Notary tooling is Phil, and Simon's looking at the client onboarding. Essentially, they're going to give an update on like what projects they're driving forward. Deep, as always, is available, focusing on like how is the flow of data cap progressing, expanding, and the whole overarching view on our data cap. And Galen is stepping into more of like how is the governance process overall running and functioning, and coordination between these multiple teams. So if you need us for anything, feel free to tag me as a first line resource and I could route you. Sometimes what goes wrong is that if you tag all of us, we usually just assume somebody else might be on it. So be very strategic with that. If you have any questions, I can always serve as a router to help you. So I think I'm the last update, and I'll pass it over to Phil for a leaderboard. So here's where we stand, you new notaries that are coming on board in the program. We are finalizing the step with the registry, the verification, and essentially everything that's been going on to like, what does it mean to onboard somebody into this program? So we now have over 100 notaries. A lot of this happens at the manual level. So you've already filled out your disclosure and sanctions verification. Thank you so much to those of you who've done it. And what we've been doing right now is compiling a list of like, okay, we have 100 notaries, 60 have filled this out, 40 haven't. So I'm in the process of pinging you 40 and saying, hey, we didn't get this disclosure. Please give this to us ASAP. Simultaneously, those of you that have filled that out, thank you so much. In the coming days, you're going to start to notice two things. You're going to start to see the transfer of the one fill come through to the wallet that you've listed. And two, you're going to receive steps for how to verify your physical ledger in the registry. If that sounds like a little bit of Greek code, that will all make sense when we send you this guide. And essentially what you'll be doing is taking your physical ledger, connecting it to your system, and then typing in the code that verifies your ledger to the wallet address that you have set up in the registry. After you complete that onboarding step, what you've essentially done is linked your GitHub to your device, to your application. And now you've taken that additional step of diligence to step in and now allocate data as it goes forward. Then on the back end, we then trigger that data to then come to your registry. It's a quite involved process. I very much appreciate the patience. I very much appreciate the communication. Those of you that have changed your wallet, followed it up, updated your GitHubs, and been in contact with me, it's been a lot. So thank you so much. There was 2 questions in chat. So just to kind of piggyback off them beforehand, if you have not received your fill, that is okay. That will be coming in the coming days. And as far as the onboarding step, we'll also be doing that. So you're not behind the power curve. This is going forward as planned. And thank you. If you have any questions, the notary channel that you've been raising to me is the best place to keep it versus a DM, which can get lost and siloed. It's so much better if you use that private notary channel so we can benefit for everybody. I see a hand in chat. Galen?
Yeah, I was just going to pause and see if anybody right here had like any burning questions that we could ping on. And then, like you had said, the disclosure form and verifying your ledger is super helpful so that we can make sure that the address you gave us will work with all of the tooling that we have. And then should be getting those done and onboarded in the next probably 10 days or so as people finish submitting their disclosures. But I don't see any other hands, so I think we should move on.
So with that, you guys all just filled out this onboarding form every time you come to these calls. I'm going to turn the floor over to Phil, who's been working on something really neat. And what this is the leaderboard. So Phil, floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, so hi guys, thanks everyone for coming. Yeah, as you know, that the notary community is growing with the 4th election having more than 100 applications. And because of this, there's been raising concerns about notary accountability. As you have seen recently, there's a lot of disputes about like whether these certain notaries are trustable. And so we think that in the long term, a lot of these accountability, we can't hold notaries accountable in a manual manner. So today I have two initiatives that I'm announcing to address this in the future. So first, we have the Notary Leaderboard. What the Notary Leaderboard is, it's an interface where you could see notaries and their statistics things about their engagement to governance calls, their time to data cap, data about like their allocations and who they allocate, which clients they're allocating to, and all of that. So in the future, we want to use this data we want to aggregate this data to heuristically figure out which notaries to flag, or we could also use this data to create some kind of risk score. This website is still in early stages. It's in a continual process being built by DMOB. And if you have any comments or thoughts, please comment them on this post 820 in the discussion sector of the governance, notary governance repo. Right, and onto that, the next initiative. So the next initiative is notary staking. The idea of notary staking has been around since basically almost the start of Phil Plus. And the idea is basically notaries would stake a certain amount of Phil to vouch for a client. What this would do is that it would hold the notaries accountable. If the client happened to be fraudulent, then the collateral would be slashed. And there's ideas of also using the stake as a way to reward the notaries. Obviously, they're taking a risk and they should be rewarded for this. So I started this discussion about it, reignited it, because there's many questions surrounding this. Should the notaries be rewarded or not? How much should the notaries be rewarded if they are rewarded? How much do they stake? Where should the reward come from? All of these are like very interesting questions that I brought up in this post, and I want to open discussion to everyone. So if you have any thoughts or comments, please put it here. We have Fabri from Keiko implementing a very early version of this smart contract. And we think that in the future, this could possibly be something. Obviously, in the MVP, we're not going to force everyone to stake Phil, right? This is going to be opt-in. So it's going to be additional to the current Phil Plus funnel. Saying that again, you are not required to stake any Phil. This is a future project and it's still an experimentation. So if you have any thoughts or comments, or you think this idea is good or bad, you can just put it in that post. And yeah, so that's my part. Bringing the spotlight to Simon next, I guess.
I was going to wait before Simon jumps in. Sorry, Phil. And give people a chance to digest some of this. Two big, exciting things. Please go read through them. The notary staking especially got a lot of conversation this morning, which is great. We love conversation. I don't want to shut down conversation or immediate dialogue, but also I want to highlight this is a very loose discussion. This is a starting point, and there's a lot of ideas here in this. So go, take a chance, read through it, comment on that issue, ask clarifying questions. It's not a simple thing where we or Phil are sitting here saying we have figured this out. This is our plan. We now know exactly what we're going to do, and we're going to ship it in 2 weeks. This is a starting point for some ideas that have been knocking around for a while. So we are stoked to get your input on how it might work. This is very early stage.
Yes, plus one to that.
Thanks, Phil. And then similarly, not seeing hands. So Simon, take it away.
All right. Hi, everyone. So this is for issue 821, which outlines the details of data cap removal. Like Phil said, with the Phil Plus community constantly growing, I think we've all seen that there's been a lot of cases of inactivity from verified clients or abuse of the system and the incentive. So there will be a new process that allows notaries or trust and transparency working group members to be able to remove data cap on applications that are not aligned with the Phil Plus policies. This will be coming soon, but please check the proposal out. And I'd like to note that we're still modifying this and would love to hear any feedback. Carrie, I think we're good to go to the next one. Yeah, so with a similar topic regarding to the Phil Plus growth, issue 818 explains how applications that do not receive any data cap or do not have any engagement after 14 days will be auto-closed. Just want to make sure everyone knows that the client is still allowed to apply again, even though the application is closed. But with so many applications, it makes it difficult to see and to cover each one. But again, if you have any input or feedback, please comment on the proposal. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Some of the discussion happened at this stage in the call in the morning. So if you're watching now and you were curious what happened in the morning, please go check that out. I'm also going to pause and see if anybody has questions about the auto close after 14 days, about the data cap removal process and what kind of goes into that. That's a big one. I'm sure you guys have any topics, as well as like the notary staking and the leaderboard. So quick questions, plenty of time, anything that's on your mind.
What was the issue number for data cap removal request? Oh, sorry, Danny, didn't see your hand.
No problem. I'll link you. Danny, floor is yours.
I was just gonna ask. I'm trying to catch up with the thread, but what is the criteria? What sort of criteria are you sketching out for discovering whether data cap allocations are fraudulent when they'll be in this sort of staking proposal?
Yeah, so that is another good question that is open for discussion. Actually, that's the first question raised. How I categorize it is that there are two sorts of criteria to judge whether an application is fraudulent or not. And the way I put it is that there's hard requirements, which is number of SPs you're saving the data at, or like, and then like, and whether the data is retrievable, and then things about CID checker. Those are all like harder requirements. And then there's also subjective requirements where it's if there's a lot of pullback in the community saying that this person, like trust and transparency working group could point out, start a dispute, right? So then there's two types. There's like hard requirements and then more subjective ones. That's how I categorize it. This is still open. So it could be a combination of both. It could be like if you fail all the hard requirements, then there's maybe something to be looked at here. It could just be trust and transparency, right? So yeah, that's how it's still open. And I think if building the MVP, we're not gonna take that into consideration yet. So right now it's just manual. Like we're just gonna we're still in test phase, right? It's like test net. It's not real fill yet. So yeah.
But Danny, as you have, thoughts and brainstorm ideas on that, and ways to think about, writing some parameters around it that could early stage, be manual, but potentially go into actors and smart contracts, to basically take a group of notaries and put them into a smart contract, or a single notary and put it into a smart contract and connect a certain amount of staked fill to it. And then what would the rules be? I would welcome your insight into that.
Sure, I'll take a look. Thank you.
All right. Well, Galen, since you're here, any questions, post in chat. We'll turn the floor over to you for governance.
Awesome. That was, I'm just grabbing the link now because I had it open. Issue 819. I think we've gotten most of the links. Sorry if there was a duplicate in the chat. There were also a couple of questions just before I jump into this about like when can round 4 get started? Short answer is you can start doing diligence now, and we encourage you to go do so. Slightly longer answer is we have to, like I said, and like Harriet has said, there's a lot of manual process to the ratification to actually add you to all of the tooling. There may be a couple steps back and forth. We'll blast a bunch of people and say, and you'll also be able to check on chain to know when you actually have data cap and when you have actually, when your address has been added to a multi-sig. So we'll tell you, and you can look on chain. It's the beauty of the decentralized ledger. So you'll know when you'll be able to go make those LDN signatures or direct allocations through the tooling. So shifting gears, discussion topic 819. I want to open this by saying, like, Deep and I have been here for, like 2 years or so. And we have really seen this community grow and shift and at times move with lightning speed, it feels like. And other times, like, it feels like proposals like take a while and there's a lot of pushback for one reason or another. And both of those things are great. I think that running a really open community requires a lot of self-moderation and allows for a lot of different voices in the room to like weigh in on these issues. But I think one of the things that has always been a real pleasure for the two of us, and I think most of the people here in working in this space on this project specifically, is how civil and professional pretty much everybody tries to remain. I follow a couple other crypto projects, and that is not always the case. There are some other crypto projects where the level of dialogue is not what I would call civil and professional, and it gets pretty heated and antagonistic in some of those other crypto spaces. Filecoin is a place where people are coming to this table because they have a lot of professional stake in this network and they want this to be successful. And sometimes we have different opinions on how that needs to go, what success looks like, and who's playing by the rules. But at the end of the day, I think that we can all agree that this is like our arguments will be taken better and our discourse will be handled better if we can remain polite, respectful, and with an eye to the fact that this is an international community, and sometimes a joke that you think might be funny or a comment that you think might be known to be sarcastic might not translate well. You need to remember that there may be a lot of people in this community that are not speaking the same native language that you are, myself included. And so at times, I have seen a lot of really great proposals, documentation, things get written, but then in the immediacy of the back and forth of comment threads or on a Slack thread that suddenly has become 100 replies back and forth, people can get a little heated and a little short, and sometimes those comments don't land. So I think one of the big things that I want to highlight here is, like, we have a code of conduct. Every member in this community is bound by that code of conduct. And if we continue to see a couple people trending in a certain direction of communicating in violation of that code of conduct, we're going to need to exercise the repercussions. And I don't want to do that. I don't think any of you want to do that. So my request to you is, try and err on the side of being polite and professional. Think before you hit that send button. And also, if you see a comment from somebody and you think like maybe they're, trying to be antagonistic, pause for a second, give yourself a chance to cool down, reread it. And maybe it's just a language barrier. I'm not trying to use that to excuse anyone's bad behavior. I just want us all to like give the benefit of the doubt. And we should all help self-moderate one another and call out when somebody is violating our code of conduct. Additionally, we've seen, we launched a really great CID checker tool. This issue kind of goes over sort of context of what has happened kind of in the past 2 months. After releasing that tool, we, some people in the community used it, called out some other people in the community and shined a light on some situations where people are not necessarily following their allocation plan. There were a couple salient points that we could distill from the ongoing. There were multiple discussion topics. There were multiple threads on Slack. There were multiple, things posted in different GitHub issues. And RG will speak a little bit later on like some of the specifics of this. But at a very high level, we want this community to continue moving forward with growth while also holding one another accountable. So I appreciate everybody that is contributing to this conversation. And I most appreciate those voices that are trying to make this productive and professional discourse. So check out issue 819. It's gotten a number of thumbs up. That it's not really necessarily a proposal in and of itself. It's kind of just a summary of where we, the governance team, have landed and what we have seen as we try and synthesize a lot of the conversation that's been happening. So pausing here just to see if there were any sort of burning questions from me or from the governance team in regards to both 819 and just sort of recent events. Not seeing any hands, that means I have made everybody unhappy and you all just don't want to tell me about it, which I see as an unmitigated success. Great. Go read 819. I think that we up next, Kay, have some updates from our working groups. And then just also last thing that I'll say on this as you go check out that issue. The governance team is going to continue doing what we have always done, which is pushing forward proposals, pushing forward the discussion, trying to work as transparently as possible to help guide this really complicated ecosystem. And we are not, the people that we showed on this chat, we are not the ultimate authorities that have all of the answers and unilateral power to necessarily, flip a switch and enact a change. Like, we are just shepherds, like helping guide this conversation in the direction that we think, as synthesizing all the different voices in the community, want to take it. So thank you for continuing to join us, to add your voice so that we can help kind of steering in the right direction. Kay-Ray?
All right. Thank you, Galen. So we have two working groups that are functioning right now, highly active. I like to thank their leads for coming to their call and just give them a subtle plug that they have their own meetings that run. They are on the opposite time schedule, and I'm sure they'll talk about that as we go. So KZ, if you're on the phone, the line is yours. I sworn I saw you earlier. Let me just talk on your behalf. KZ, feel free to jump and interrupt me if you're here. So essentially what the Phil Plus team is doing is they have a big update with the number of applications that they're working. So if you can see, they're actively on the hunt and soliciting any private data clients or storage providers that want to participate in this pilot. To participate in this pilot, there is a link that you would click. I'm going to click this link here and then drop it in chat for all of us. And essentially you fill out your information on your organization, what you're up to, and this is the primer to actually join this pilot program to raise this data as we come through. Also, as this goes on, they have their multi-sig update that's currently in process. So they've already added 13, as you see in the notes, with 36 to go. This is simultaneously like a big lift on their part. So again, if you're looking for that onboarding data, the Phil Plus Enterprise team is working on that right now. KZ shepherds this, and their Slack message can go. I see as I just started, Galen, did you have a question or want to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in here and highlight as well. Notaries, as you are going through and performing diligence on open large data sets, if you find one that you think would be a good candidate for this Enterprise Phil Plus program, tag KZ in it, send him a message on Slack as well, posted in that channel, because he is looking for good data sets that will help get them channeled to the right direction, so they don't sit waiting for notaries to make a decision when it is outside of the scope of the typical LDN process. And then similarly, we are adding more of those notaries to that multi-sig. So similar to the LDN process, stay tuned if your name is on that list. And if you want to be on that list, reach out to KC. I think up next we have RG, Trust and Transparency.
Yeah, I can start speaking to it. Sweet. So I think a few things. We closed issue 811, which was regarding removal of notaries. The conclusion is that the consensus from the 150 comments or more on that issue is that we're not going to remove any notaries right now, and the removal should be a last resort. So in the next TNT working group call, we'll be discussing what should be some of the mechanisms in which the notaries that have been flagged can regain trust. And so a proposal in one of the comments that I made is we can choose the last 10 signed applications from the notaries that have been flagged, and then ask them to show how they have complied with their due diligence plan that they've outlined in their notary applications. And so a few of the notaries have actually posted a video, a link to the video, a recording explaining that, or they've posted, a write-up on the issue. So please check that out. And if you believe that, you as a community member are not convinced that their signing is in line with their due diligence plan, please comment. You can still comment even though the issue is closed. And then moving forward, the two other issues, 815 and 816, are still having an active discussion. My proposal is to keep them open for one more week, and we wanted to take this is a larger proposal to have an issue closed off within 2 weeks if there isn't a lot of disagreement. We wanted to kind of follow some of the ideas that are coming around optimistic governance and things like that, and eventually we might explore staking and whatnot. But so I'll be writing up an issue on the Notary Governance regarding that. So if you have an opinion otherwise, that the issue should be opened for longer than 2 weeks, please comment on that. Right after this call, I'll be posting a link where we'll be collecting GitHub names and Slack IDs for the TNT working group members. So I posted this in the TNT working group Slack channel about creating a TNT DAO. So we'll be leveraging some of the work that Phil had just announced with regards to staking, and we'll be experimenting with staking. So to be a part of the TNT DAO, you would need to stake some Filecoin, and then you'll have a say. We want to design that with the community. So I don't want to be kind of the person telling you, this is how the processes would work. So that's in the works. And last but not least, I will be out of office from February 7th to February 14th. And the TNT working group call will be adjusted on February 6th at the same times. So that's 8:30 a.m. PST, and then 5:30 p.m. PST. So please look out an invite for that. I'll be posting links to that in the Slack channel as well. And I know there's a couple of members on the group. I have a lot of DMs that I'll get back to you, but I just wanted to kind of flag this out. I flagged this in the previous meeting as well. I think I want to just kind of the position I'm in. I'm not able to, make any decisions or have favoritism. So I think some of the messages that I've gotten is regarding, hey, could you vouch for me that I haven't done something wrong? And that isn't something for me to decide. I think please post your issues and your comments on the issue itself, and we can, of course, I'm more than happy to bring the discussion to the TNT working group channel, the TNT working group calls, but I'm in no position to kind of, make a decision on that front. So those are the main updates on the TNT front. And yeah, if you have any questions or concerns regarding joining the calls or participating in trust and transparency broadly, please message me on Slack, and I'm more than happy to have a chat.
Thanks, RG. There was a lot of discussion on this in the morning. Completely open line. Just stick a hand up, and if you guys have any questions, this impacts a lot of people.
I think most of the people impacted are in the morning time zone.
Probably makes sense too, James. All right. Well, thanks, RG. I appreciate that. We wanted to just kind of flag in this kind of sense, there's a lot of questions on like, how does the program govern? Where can you go for like questions on this one? I'd like to point that although not perfect, GitHub is truly like the source of where a lot of this information lives. So I know that on the screen earlier, we shared the discussion page where you could see some of these conversations going. The screenshot that I picked just came from like the notary responsibility as far as like, how do the data sets function? How do the onboarding process work? So we'll be looking at this and trying to flag this as public as possible for you to make this system like as transparent as we go forward. That's probably the word of the day, and then open. So thank you for all. This question came up from the morning. This was like, what is the status on the SPs and notaries that were flagged in issue 811? Thank you so much for RG for kind of speaking to this when he gave his update on like what those two issues are and then what the status is. So we answer this in the morning. Feel free to watch the video, and thank you to Winan who flagged this and then made this as an item that you took care of, RG. I appreciate that. So this is your last chance to sign up for the SLA. It looks like we have 59 people on the call. I did a quick check. We were not at 59 here. So again, 57. Sorry, those two people that just jumped out. But I'm going to post this link one more time. And with this, you can actually sign into the Airtable and then just mark that you're here. So with that, open comms. If there's anything on your mind, the floor is yours. Just raise a hand.
I just had a comment that I wanted to say. So I think on the governance team side, we have noticed that, a lot of notaries are feeling hesitant to sign new applications, because of everything that has happened over the last couple of weeks. And I think I just want to reiterate that our goal as the governance team, my goal as the trust and transparency lead, is not to, again, like kick people out or, police people. It's really to say that, hold people accountable to what they've outlined in their own due diligence plan. So please don't feel like, that if you sign applications, we're going to come after you. If anything, I think it just gives you more kind of power and clout in the community to say that, hey, I'm an active notary and I'm continuing to be an active notary, even though, even if I was flagged and even if other people are pointing out to you that, you're not doing the right thing. I think actions speak more than words. And I think we want to kind of, as we're building the tools, like, we had to build the CID checker bot. I'm going to release new tools in the next 2 months. And I think the goal is to, not trust people, to create a trustless system. And if you do the right thing, and if you believe you do the right thing, those systems that we're building, they're all data driven, and they will only flag, things that are not in line with the program guidelines. So just wanted to flag that. If you are a notary on this call and you're feeling a little hesitant and a little, unsure of where things are, please know that we're here to support you. We are happy to hop on a call with you and work with you to kind of clarify your doubts and concerns as well. So just wanted to say that.
Yes, and piggybacking on that, one of the things that was mentioned, that I mentioned in the call this morning, is a reminder to all of the notaries, some of the conversation that we have seen in the past few weeks is, oh, well, I didn't know X, Y, and Z was a requirement for LDNs, or I didn't know I needed to do this, or a notary saying, hey, you didn't perform, diligence on this LDN, what's the deal? So all of the notaries submitted a diligence plan in your application. You told the community what type of diligence you would perform, what your process was going to be. And while you may have thought that only applied in certain cases, that is your diligence plan for all data cap allocations. So if you are signing an LDN, you should be following the same diligence plan and the process that you laid out. So when we get to this point of, notaries saying, well, I didn't have clear guidelines of what was expected of me, that's not entirely true. You set your own guidelines for what you would do as a notary. So this is just a reminder that as you go look at those large data sets, and there's something like 360 that are open, ready for diligence and ready for signatures, please go check them out, ask questions, track the answers, read through it, and then sign or don't. And if you choose not to sign, please comment as to why. It will really help the other notaries understand what you found in your investigation, or what maybe triggered your spidey sense, so that you could understand this didn't pass my sniff test. So with that, other questions from the community, other conversations, other topics that we wanted to jump into? Also, there was a question in the chat about a hackathon, and I think we have Megan Kleiman on the line from Filecoin Foundation, who may also be able to answer that question about getting some support. Yeah, there you go. Orbit.
Yeah, I can.
Megan.
And so we totally have a program to help sponsor events and like community run events. It's called the Orbit program. And so I'll stick some email or stick some Slack handles in here, but Robert Dowling, Brendan Shackshift, or Yulia, I'm totally blanking on her last name right now. But I will pull up their handles and stick it in the chat. Any one of those people, or events@phil.org will also get you to them.